So I welcome you in the name of Konzeptwerk Neue Ökonomie. We are an NGO in Leipzig, and we work on global justice, and we focus on how does actually the economic system need to change, and how can we think of economy in a way that is globally just. We organize and conduct educational events. We do also method development, publications, public events. And if you are interested to learn more about our work, my colleague can leave you the link to our website also in the chat. And the project is funded by Engagement Global with funds from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Catholic Fund. And the event is part of a digital event series that's called What Holds the World Together. And we deal with topics on solidarity in times of crisis. And today we have with us Amel Yacef. Hello, nice that you joined us. Amel, you're a consultant, trainer, and facilitator. You do management and coordination of projects, and you have a lot of experience in organizing and mobilizing young people, women, and grassroots community leaders coming from especially marginalized communities, or from communities that are marginalized by systems and institutions. And you have a focus on social justice, on racial justice, gender justice, equality, and human rights. And you are based in Ireland. Today you're also sitting in Ireland. And you describe yourself also as an Algerian who made Ireland your home. Yeah, and you say also that you enable those voices in the margins to sit in their power and impact political discourse. And I think this is this is why I actually thought of you. This would be a good fit for our event. I met Amel in another course, and in this one you were also giving a little workshop and input, and we talked about discomfort and sitting with discomfort and using also maybe discomfort and exploring it in learning contexts. And I actually also remember a very structured and comprehensible way of presenting, and I felt like I could also really see you as a person, or with what kind of motivation you are there, and I really liked that. And I also feel that you're engaging with questions that seemed really relevant to me for this context as well. So thank you so much for joining. And today we also have with us Rosica Mahdi and Melody Ledwin, who are our two interpreters. So if you choose to listen to this in German, you will hear them. Otherwise, you will not hear them. But thank you so much for joining also. And I give the word to you, Amel.
Thank you, Nora. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me and having thought of me for this space and this series of kind of learning and thinking opportunities that you are facilitating at the moment. I actually picked up a habit in Ireland, which is to speak really, really fast. But for Rosica's and Melody's sake, I'm going to try and slow it down. So do send me big signs of slow down. But I'm going to try and do it. And as Nora said, I am joining you from Ireland. I'm in a place called Greystones, which is not too far from Dublin. And very unusually, a bit of sun has just appeared. So hopefully it's the same for you guys wherever you are joining the conversation from. Um, so I'm gonna share my screen now. Hopefully this is gonna work. Um, Here we are. I hope it's working. So just also to say, with my own neurodiversity, there's things that could actually take my attention away. So the chat box is one of them where I get very curious and I really want to see what people are saying, and that could actually derail me from what I'm supposed to be talking to you about. So I'm actually gonna let Nora and their colleagues to have a look and keep an eye on that chat box where I invite you to connect and engage, and they'll tell me if anything needs my attention. So I hope that's okay with everyone. So today, after various conversations with Nora that actually have been going on for a few months, actually, kind of planning for today, we were trying to think about what could be a useful sharing from my part with you guys. And well, one of the things that came up was, which actually is coming up quite a lot in the spaces that I'm in as well, is all of these spaces that we are curating or facilitating or creating, um, uh, uh, kind of in the times we're in, end up being the spaces where a lot of things are emerging and a lot of discomfort can emerge as well. And the idea is, how do we actually think about these spaces in a way that's inclusive and responsive and that is justice and needs based? So that is where I am hoping to take you today. So the idea is also that I want to share some of my practice and get you a chance to try it out for yourselves as well. And so maybe there's going to be various times where we're just going to break into smaller groups in your breakout rooms, and the aim of that is really for you to digest what you just heard or see if it's relevant, if it's landing, if it's aligning with the work that you are doing as well. So what we are my sorry, the slides are not moving for some here we go. So I kind of wanted to start with also maybe sharing some of my commitments as a guest being in your space. I wanted to share with you as well where I situate myself so that you have a sense of where I'm coming from. And I will be introducing then a tool that I kind of imagined throughout my career and my journey and my activism to make sense of things. And like Nora referred to it, it's really nice to hear that it's kind of like this neat and nice kind of a way of simplifying and making things make sense. And then hopefully we'll get a chance to try it out. And then to wrap it up, I was thinking of actually doing a bit of a, like, what are the key things that you need to remember your before, your during, and your after creating a space for learning or thinking for others or for groups. So my commitment for you to this space and for you as a guest are, I am bringing my own learning process and my own ways of thinking, my neurodiversity, my own way of being challenged or understanding. And my commitment is to remember that all of you are exactly the same as me. You all have very different processes. You think differently, you connect with things differently, you learn differently, and therefore trying to keep that in mind and being present in that as well during our time together. If discomfort arises for me, which probably could happen to you as well in this space, I am kind of making the commitment to tending to it for myself with care, and share, if appropriate, that's how I'm feeling as well. And I'm kind of inviting you to do the exact same thing. I have no control over how you're going to receive what I'm offering. So I'm gonna not try to persuade or convince you. I'm actually just gonna share, and hopefully whatever I'm sharing is gonna land and make sense to you. I do believe that impact matters more than intention, so I'm going to stay mindful of both. So if unintentionally I say or do something that might be upsetting or hurtful, I commit to make that the priority, not the intention of not actually wanting to harm or hurt. Today is a setup where I actually can't see all of you, and there's a few of us in this space, and we're not even in the same kind of physical place. And I'm not going to get a chance to name all of the differences and the beautiful diversity within the group. And I'm not going to be able to name every of your stories or your identities here, but I want to say that I honor them and I'm aware of them being in this space. I I hope I'll be able to hold your stories with the respect that I hope you will receive mine and hold it. I entered this space, which usually is how I try to enter all spaces, with a beginner's mind. So I'm open to learning, and I'm going to for sure learn something new again today, being with you. And I strive to embody what the actual meaning of respect in Latin means, which is the willingness to look again, which I think is a really cool thing. Because I think respect really means very different things for different people. But if I'm kind of happy with the Latin meaning of it. Okay, so in terms of where I situate myself, and again, if you take into account the slide just before, I think it's really important to share honestly where we are politically as well, so that you kind of get a sense, or you receive what I'm going to say, and you actually have a choice on how you're going to receive what I say in terms of what you believe and what you think we might believe in common and what we might not believe in common. I think it's kind of important to have that. So if I remember at the very beginning of our conversations with Nora, we were talking about that concept of coming from a decolonial feminist space. And for me, decolonial feminism is a lifelong practice of unlearning control. So how control shows up in each of us and in life around us. So it's like, how do I unlearn the idea of control? How do I notice power wherever I am? And trying to undo the harm that has been caused by different systems, starting with myself. So how do I undo that harm? How is it showing up in me? And how am I undoing that harm? I do believe that decolonial feminism is about staying humble and open to being changed. I reject neutrality, even though Ireland as a country is supposed to be a neutral country, but yet we still allow American troops to land in Shannon Airport. So I reject neutrality because I consider that all knowledge is shaped by histories, land, power, bodies, and all of this will definitely mean that nothing can be actually neutral. And I do believe that lived experience, especially from marginalized communities, is actual vital wisdom. So you'll hear me use terminology so some of the language that I'm going to be using, I use the idea of systems of oppressions, because I do believe that there are systems that run our world that are deeply oppressive and violent. I use a lot the idea of responsive practice, because I actually believe in that, the responding to difference rather than reacting to it. A lot of my work, it would be justice and needs-based work, because I actually do really believe that we need to approach the work from what we and others need and frame it within our fundamental right to justice. And you'll hear me say marginalized communities. And what I mean by that is all the communities that are pushed by the margins by the very systems that I was talking about. So in terms then of principles, and all of this is going to make sense in the sense of my practice then, like on the ground when you're facilitating spaces, why does that matter? Some of the principles that guide me and guide my decolonial feminism or my politics or my way of being, my activism, is that idea of starting from the margins. So change can actually start from the edges, and it does begin wherever the most impacted are. So we center the knowledge, the needs, and the leadership of those who are the most impacted, and we go from there. So it's not like a center, some universal decided whatever kind of center, and then we go from there. It's actually we find the center where it needs to be, and sometimes and very often it is in the margins. Naming power and unpicking systems, so being aware of power, understanding power, and exposing how power operates. Some of it is actually very good. I love the power that I have, and it's how to use it or remembering that we have it as well. So it's not always that idea of the power over the power that controls. So power operates in our relationships, in our institutions, in ourselves, and it's very important to be aware of that. But also it's challenging whiteness, patriarchy, capitalism, ableism, heteronormativity, and coloniality, but as interlocking systems, not as individual ones. Another principle that I go by is actually around honoring embodied and emotional knowing. And that's actually about reclaiming our emotions, our intuition, our body as vital tools for justice and survival. And I think because of like a white supremacist agenda or colonialism, there was this separating our bodies and kind of considering that up here, the cognitive, the smart intelligence is contained here, and that was a way of actually making anything that had to do with feeling our bodies as something that wasn't sophisticated enough. And I think there's some reclaiming that needs to happen for all of us. Practicing relational accountability, which is a tough one. So it's liberation is collective. We have to stay accountable to people, to land, to histories, communities, even when it's very uncomfortable. And the idea is really that if all the ailment and the sickness or the not being well is caused by systems, the medicine cannot be an individual one. It needs to be collective. Another one is holding multitude, so refusing binaries, embracing contradiction, complexity, the both and in identity, in struggle, in transformation. And this one, I have to say, I've learned it from my siblings and comrades within queer justice. As a het woman of color, there was a lot of concepts around, but I was still very much in binaries, and having worked in solidarity and being deeply, deeply challenged by some of my siblings and comrades and peers within the queer struggles, really taught me how to think in non-binary, in multitude. And that is something that I would be forever grateful for a very close community to my heart. And then the last one is actually imagining otherwise. So this work is not just resistance. It's not always about kind of that fight. It's also about building a world, which I think is very much what, Nora, your organization is about, is like thinking economy in a different way, or thinking it's dreaming beyond the systems. It's like very often in my kind of anti-fascist practice or activism when I was younger, I was just like, no, we just need to get rid of everything. But like now I think, are you going to put people in an island and just like, so not interact with them or stop live? People are just not going to stop existing because they have a different political positioning, or actually not even political, but harmful way of being and violent way of being. So it's like, how do we start thinking of the repair work that needs to happen after so much violence and so much harm has been happening? So that's where I'm positioning myself. I hope it's making sense. I am not sure how this is landing with some of you. Some might actually feel a connection. Others might go like, "Ooh, maybe you used a few words that are making me a little bit uncomfortable," which is completely okay, which is part of the some of the questions in the conversation I want to introduce to you. Is that okay? Okay, so what we want to know today is how do we make the spaces that we facilitate or events that we organize diverse, inclusive, equitable, kind of in alignment with some of our values. And I am going to make a big assumption because I am not sure who's in the room and what organization or spaces you're in, but I'm going to make the assumption that the majority of you are involved in either learning and education spaces, either holding them, organizing them, facilitating them, or reflecting and thinking spaces, also mobilizing and organizing, support and care, and then the last one would be creation and imagination, so all of the art spaces. So I'm kind of, I hope I kind of gave a good sense of the various spaces that I'm talking about where we might need to really think about how we approach those spaces. So my question to you is, okay, so how do we, but my question is, why do we want them to be diverse and inclusive and equitable? What's our agenda? What is motivating us to think about these spaces this way? The why is very important, and the why is the thing that's going to anchor you. But also, it's kind of it's like, is your why driven by values or is it driven by beliefs? Is it driven by something else, like an agenda that's out of your control? Was this space set up? Is this learning space set up because the legislation said so, or an institution said so? Or was it set up because of this grassroots need to have some kind of space for people to be in, you know? So that why is going to have a very big impact on the how. Um, so one of the things that I have been doing throughout my career, so I was a youth worker for a very long time, then community worker, and then kind of did adult education, community education, and sometimes continued working with young people as well. And throughout the years, I kind of learned, you know, went to different training, did different, talked to different people, read different books, but more importantly was actually learning the very hard way, doing stuff that was not good. And actually after feeling going, that was not a success. Um, and kind of like, I was like, okay, now I'm someone who needs clarity. I'm okay with things being messy as long as I'm clear that they are messy. I don't know if that makes sense, but I actually kind of need that um, clarity. And I actually thought of a way that would support me in figuring out my why in doing the work. So I didn't reinvent the wheel. It's nothing that's going to kind of, you're not going to go like, oh my God, this is the new great thing. But it actually really works. So I hope it's going to help you make sense of it. I'm kind of calling it, it's still the jury's out. I'm not a fan of the name of the practice yet. So if anyone is really good with snappy, cool names and titles, I'd be very happy for you to think about the name of this practice that because I'm writing a book at the moment. So if I could actually have a little bit of a contest, and if you come up with a really cool name, that's the name I'll use in the book. Um, for the moment, the holding name is the three ways of being. So the way I look at it is for me to make sense of things, to help me figure out things or reach some clarity or plan for anything I do, I actually situate myself in three dimensions and three levels. The first one is me being with the world. So the context, what's the social, political context that's happening around me right now? The second bit is being with myself. So once I actually figured out what context, socially, politically, whatever is going on, power, whatever is going on around me that is connected to the issue that I'm struggling with or that I need clarity about, then I go, okay, how is that impacting me? What's happening inside? How is the big stuff showing up So I'm probably speaking really fast, so I'm going to slow down here. How is the big things showing up here? And what are the things that I need to be aware of that are going to have an impact on the way I'm being? With the third bit, which is being with others. So context, inside, whatever I'm carrying, and then how is that impacting my engagement with others? So the first one, I want to share with you a tool that it's just changed my life when I came across this tool. I actually was working with the um, intersectional Center for Justice, the Center for Intersectional Justice in Berlin at the time. That doesn't exist anymore. But that actually introduced that tool to me, and I was just like, what? How did I live my life without it before? So it's helping us to kind of figuring out how we are in the world. So when I say being in the world, it's understanding the context, the systems, and the power structures. So some of the helpful questions that I find is, so it's like, what are the systems of power that shape the context that I am stepping into? So whatever the context I'm in, if I'm stepping into it, what are the systems of power that are shaping it? Who is this space currently designed for? Are people from marginalized groups able to shape this space or just participate in it? What are assumptions that I am making about neutrality, respect, or safety? And the tool that I find very helpful is this one. This, I don't know what this, here we go. So it is a quadrant. I don't know, maybe some of you are familiar with it and others might not be, but it's just, it brings the whole thing together. So it's about kind of like thinking of discrimination in oppressive systems. And it's the dimensions that are within that. So we have the individual dimension, an institutional one, a structural one, and a historical one. The individual one is the one that we are the most familiar with. So it's the discrimination that we know the most. And it's usually associated with individual people interacting with other people. So it's like this person was racist with this person, and there was a homophobic attack the other night, and there was hate speech, and there was denying access or rights of people. These are all the ways hateful behavior shows up, and identity-based hate shows up as well. And the issue with the individual piece where we get stuck is that we treat the issue as if it was the person who caused the harm and the person who has been harmed that are the issue, and we need to make interventions for the two of them, forgetting that two of them do not exist in a vacuum. There's reasons why some of this happened. The other aspect is the structural, and by structural I mean the cultural and societal element of society. So it is representing the social manifestation of structural inequalities. They're based on deep-seated social hierarchies that are reflected in all social institutions, such as school systems, labor market, housing market, banking system, health system, media, politics. And the individuals are placed somewhere on the spectrum of this hierarchy, which is often invisible. The demographics of certain societal sectors, so if there's overrepresentation or underrepresentation of certain groups of people, can help us uncover structural discrimination patterns. The third one is the institutional, and there's a slight difference with the institution and the structural. So the institutions are, they're very much connected to institutions and laws. So we're talking about the school, the justice system, the health system, the welfare system. These are institutions that have been established to support or run a society. So within those institutions, then there's a manifestation of discrimination that's very often more to do with focused on the actions or the behaviors or decisions of people that are in positions of power within the institutions. With the structural stuff, it's actually a lot harder because it's a lot of cultural things. It's the jokes, it's the way of being. That's how we are. This is how German people are. This is how Irish people are, you know? Whereas with the institutions, there is a lot more consciously or unconsciously people are acting up on their biases. And also political decisions, who ends up being voted where, who decides on the budgets of doing what, and then this is going to actually impact how some services are delivered to certain communities or identities. And the historical element, which is the fourth one, is actually a dimension that's the foundation of the three others. And very often we kind of forget the historical element. And by historical, I mean anything that still has an impact on today, not kind of, so there's some historical things that happened, and it's very important to know about them because they give you context, but they're not necessarily active now. So I'll give you an example of white Irish people would have been racialized because they were colonized by the British. They were the only known colony in the west of Europe. And so they were racialized exactly the same way as Black people or brown people would have been racialized at the time. And that had a massive impact in terms of how Irish identity developed and all that kind of stuff. However, through history and different things like this, there's that idea of like, when did Irish people become white? Because of some more of a political power. That racialization is not actually relevant now. So there's still discrimination, specifically anti-Irish discrimination, but within a UK context and a UK British context because of the shared history. But outside of that context, no white Irish person is going to actually face any racialization or discrimination because they're white Irish. So this is a very important historical point. However, it is not relevant or it's not persisting today. We're talking here in this dimension about anything historical that is still persisting right now, today, in terms of the portrayal of people. And I'm thinking of people of color in particular. I am Muslim, and the portrayal of Muslims from kind of a historical point of view to now is still extremely relevant to my experiencing Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred. So, and I'm aware I'm actually dumping an awful lot of information here, but I'm going to give you a chance to kind of digest it a little bit. So by understanding these dimensions, we can understand power dynamics better. What I'd like you to think about, and Nora, if you could actually think of starting kind of a bit of a breakout room. You're probably going to be ending up in a room where you don't really know people. So you could actually have like a quick introduction, and we have about like, I'd say, I'll be very precise, but like 8 minutes to do this. And the question is, so when you think of the needs and the issues that are faced by the people that you work with, as well as your own communities, where do you think those needs and those issues fit within the quadrant? So within the quadrant, just to remind you, there's an individual experience, structural, which is societal and cultural, institutional, and historical element of discrimination and oppression. So when you think of the needs and the issues being of whoever, like if you're thinking of whatever capacity you have of organizing events or organizing spaces that are for learning and thinking, and who you're organizing that for, being people from your own community and yourself, or for other communities, where do you think the needs and the issues fit within that quadrant? Is that making sense? Is the question clear? If I'm answering these questions honestly, then I can figure out what I need to do about how it's showing up. And some of it could be just, you know what, I'm not ready to deal with this right now. And I'm not gonna engage with this, or, throughout my life, I engaged in a lot of trauma work and trauma therapy, and there were things that were just not I wasn't ready. And so I didn't put myself in positions where I wasn't ready because I wasn't going to offer anything. Or it would have been kind of from an ego place going like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to speak about this when actually I'm being triggered by this. Why am I putting myself in a position where I'm going to talk about something that triggers me, you know? So it's actually about kind of like showing grace and compassion to yourself as well. Um, okay, so one thing that I wanted to share with you is a tool that I find super useful. I still use it all the time. I suppose the difference is that, I'm going to go through the different bits of the tool. Now I think now I do it a lot quicker. It's kind of just a pretty automatic thing. So the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Um, and it's actually coming from more of a spiritual practice as well. And the idea is that there are five things that we do that happen to us the minute we enter any kind of space. Okay. And I'm actually going to give you an example of how that works in a learning or thinking space or an event that you might be organizing to get people in for various reasons. So, all of us, when we walk into any space, we actually have a perception of what might be going on. And by perception, we mean what we actually understand or interpret is going on in the space. So, how do a useful question, and we're going to review the questions at the end, is actually how do things actually look, but not just for me. So it's that kind of keeping an eye in how we think, what we see, and a lot of our perception is very much connected to the filters, our different filters that we have, and I might perceive something that might not be actually true. Another thing we show up with is our beliefs. So it's our opinions and views that we hold usually very strongly. We often kind of accept them as true. And I actually make a big difference between beliefs and values. I think we mix often our beliefs with values. So it's just like, I believe this, um, and connect it with some kind of deep value. And the difference I see is that the values are the things that actually really ground me, anchor me. They're kind of very solid. And the beliefs, they come and go. What I believed when I was 10 is not what I believe now. And one of my values is to stay open enough for my beliefs to change. So the value is the openness or the courage, and it is always there. And the aim of that value is to be able to be open for those beliefs to change or evolve or be challenged or be enforced as well. But when those beliefs in our minds are connected with value, or we think they're our values, can be a lot harder to shift because then if they're being challenged, we take it very personally. And we kind of disconnect from whatever is happening because we are trying to make sense of why this belief has been challenged. And one useful question to ask is, do I know this to be true for others than me? The third thing we do is we assume things, and assumptions are what we usually do to fill in blanks. Assumptions are not good or bad, that what we do for survival very often and guessing what's happening. So we have a gap, we have no information, and we fill that gap. And we go, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And those assumptions help us figure out things. They can be very useful. But the very important thing about assumption is to remember that they're not true, and we don't know if they're true or not until we figure it out or there's proof or someone tells us or whatever. We get in trouble when we start believing that our assumptions are true. So the question that is very helpful is, do I know for certain that this is the case? The fourth one is our expectations. So what we think we can, should, what we think can, should, or will happen. So often what we expect is connected to our fears or hopes. Like we're hoping this is going to happen, or we're expecting this to be a disaster. So the question is, can I predict for certain what is going to happen? The last one, and not the least, is our feelings and our emotions. So these are indicators that are they're kind of the somatic, it's what's happening in our bodies. And very often they're like telling us all the information we need to know, and we are very good at ignoring them. So any kind of tingling or anything that's happening in our bodies usually are indicators of what might be happening, and it's very important for us to kind of tune in. So the questions are, what am I feeling right now? Where am I feeling it? What is it trying to tell me? So the key questions here are those that I just shared with you. But if I give you an example of, let's say, I am organizing a meeting about something where we need to mobilize on an issue. And I'm inviting various people. I'm not too sure. I don't have much relationship with these people. I don't really know them, but they're coming into the space I'm facilitating so that we can talk about this issue. And what I notice as a facilitator is that there's someone that keeps talking over another person. So they keep interrupting that person, they keep talking over them. And if we freeze that, um, and we freeze it because I start feeling in my body that I'm not very comfortable with what's happening. So I see this, I'm kind of going, okay, I'm responsible for this space. Should I do something? Should I not do something? So let's freeze it for a second and see what's going on. So I started feeling a bit of discomfort. There's like I'm feeling it around my throat here. I'm feeling a little bit of kind of nervous energy, kind of going like, oh, okay, there's something going on. And so my body's trying to tell me that there's something going on that I'm not completely 100% okay with. So if I'm kind of, okay, so this is what I'm feeling. If I kind of think about what do I perceive is going on? So my perception is that this person is probably doing this on purpose. They keep interrupting. And I have very little patience for people who keep interrupting other people, especially if it's a gendered situation. And if, like, let's say it's a male that is interrupting a woman or a queer person, I'd be just like, whoa, this is, so I'm actually perceiving coming from my own biases, my own feelings about people interrupting other people. I hate being interrupted. So I'm just like, okay, so that is my perception. And my perception has been guided by things that I experienced or my lived experience. Okay. So my belief that is being challenged in this situation is that I do believe that everybody in the spaces that I facilitate should equally participate, that they should have equal participation space. And this belief is right now very much being challenged by this person that keeps interrupting. So my assumption in here is that straight away, because that's the kind of person I am, I'm going to go, oh my God, this person who's being interrupted is going to think that I've let them down. I'm not stopping the person who keeps interrupting them. I'm not doing anything to help them in this situation. So my assumption is they're going to think I'm a crap facilitator. And my expectation is that the next meeting I organize, this person is not going to show up. They're not going to come to my meetings because they're going to say, Amel is crap when people interrupt me. She never stopped them interrupting me. So if I apply, so this is when you think about it, and I hope this is actually connecting with some of your experiences. All of this is happening here. We just created a whole scenario of things in our head, and I usually call that the noise. If I ask these coming questions, and I go, okay, so what am I feeling right now? Okay, I actually know where it's going on. It's going in my body. oh, I'm feeling it around my throat, which usually means I feel that someone is stopping me from speaking. So there's something that's going on here for me, that's about me. My assumption is, am I assuming that I know what's going to happen? I like, do I know for real, like, do I really know 100% that this person hates me? No, I don't. I have zero proof about that. I just made that up in my head. If I'm talking like my perception as well, do I know for sure that that's actually what's happening? Is this person interrupting on purpose? I don't know. As long as I haven't spoken to this person and I don't know anything about this person, they might be doing it not even realizing that they are interrupting someone else. And my belief is about that equal participation that's being challenged. Do I know that that's true for everyone? I don't think it is because there's other spaces, like, if I'm facilitating a decolonial space, I will say to people, some people are going to need to speak more than others. Or there's some voices that we need to prioritize and center and hear more than others. So, did I actually believe that people should participate equally? There's some spaces where I don't believe that. I actually believe that in some spaces, there's some voices that should just not be heard and actually should just be listening, and that's how they should participate. So that belief needs to be challenged as well. And the expectation of that person is going to go, I'm never coming back to this thing again, is again in my head. So if I actually really question all of these things that were happening in me. And again, remember, no binaries. There's no good or bad. We do all of these things usually to keep ourselves safe, to protect ourselves, to know how to be in places. These are completely normal reactions and normal things that happen in us. But if I actually don't suspend them for a minute or kind of go, okay, all of this is happening, but I don't know for sure that any of this is true, it's going to have a very different impact on how I'm going to respond. Because if I stay in the noise, more than likely, I'm going to start being a bit snappy, stop the person who keeps interrupting, do kind of a whole performative thing to kind of position myself in a way that the other person knows I'm on their side. I could be actually very mean to the person who keeps interrupting. I'm going to abuse my power as a facilitator. And I'm going to actually respond thinking that this is me showing up for the person who's been interrupted. But if I actually ask all those questions to myself, the way I'm going to respond is probably going, okay, we need a little break now. Can we just go have a little tea or coffee? And that's if it's happening in person. And actually, the person who's being interrupted go ahead. I kind of noticed this person keeps interrupting you. Are you okay with that? Or like, or go to the person who's interrupting, going, it feels that you have a lot of things to say. And I hear you, and I know it's very important, but I'm very conscious that some other people might be a bit shy, or, like, would you mind if we just be mindful of who's speaking, or could you take a little break, or I can talk to you one to one after? The response becomes extremely different when you're situating yourself as someone who's observing and figuring out what's going on as well for you in that space. Is that making sense for people? Yeah.
Amel,
Yes.
there was one question in the chat.
Yes.
The question is, can you maybe share a bit more on the nuance between a belief, everybody participating equally, and the values one might hold?
So I hope I understand the question. Oh yeah. So, and tell me if I'm understanding this. So the nuance between the value around that belief and the belief of participating equally. So the value is, for me, the value that's going to allow me to challenge that belief is a value of, let's say, justice or equity. So that for equity to happen, which is different from equality. So for equity to happen where people get what they need in order to participate fully, and that there's an equality of outcome. So what we're looking at is something that that equality happens in what we all get at the end of it, rather than what we get to start with, would mean that value, my value of equity or justice, will help me be okay with my belief being challenged. I hope I'm making sense. So if my belief is everybody needs to participate equally or has the right to participate equally, and in this situation that I just described, this belief might not be very useful to me, instead of getting stuck in that belief, if I go back to my value of equity, this allows me to challenge that belief and go, actually, do I really believe in this situation? Maybe that's not what's happening. Maybe this person has an experience of being silenced all the time and they feel for once they can be heard. So they're going to take all the space they can. Therefore, my belief of equal participation for everyone can be challenged because I went back to my value of equity and justice. Is that making sense? Yeah? Is that responding to your question? Great. Okay, so I'm looking at the time. I am tempted to kind of move on to the next bit and then actually give you a little bit more time then to connect all of the dots together in like 10 or 15 minutes between in smaller groups just to digest. Would that be okay with people? Would we give this a try? Okay, I'm just gonna assume everybody just, and it is an assumption. So I've just put something that is not true in something that I want to believe. Okay, so that was actually sharing with you one of the tools that I find very useful in helping me doing that self-awareness when I come into a space. But as you'll see when we'll get to the end, everything keeps being connected to the context as well. So I have to carry all of that at the same time. So a third, so the context, me, and the third bit is with the other. So being with others is that relational practice. It's inclusion, it's responsiveness instead of being reactive. And some of the questions that I find very useful and helpful in that space is, will the people that I'm going to facilitate feel seen, heard, valued? How will I know that they feel seen, heard, and valued? What signals of harm or disconnection am I prepared to notice and respond to? And that's a very big one, isn't it? It's like stuff you see, you kind of know, and you pretend you didn't see because you just don't feel equipped to deal with it. So if there's signals of harm or disconnection, am I prepared to notice them? How do I create space for difference? Are there practices in place that honor different ways of knowing, expressing, and participating? And I'm kind of thinking here specifically around kind of neurodiversity, which I'm very happy even for my own because I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic. And now I'm in a space where I can share it without feeling weird about it and being able to name what I need to be able to participate properly. But also that's been a challenge for me as a facilitator to figure out how to make a space responsive to the needs. And on this, just to share with you as well, one of the big, I suppose, things I'm thinking about at the moment is the difference between being ready and being prepared. So readiness versus preparedness. And being prepared is having a million scenarios that you actually don't know if, so it's like, if this happens and if this happens, and this is exhausting. Whereas readiness is, what are the tools I need to deal with whatever is going to show up, which is a lot harder. But also, I think using my energy to be ready and have all the toolbox I need rather than thinking about all the scenarios, I found actually very helpful. Can people challenge, question, or offer feedback safely? I have to say, as a facilitator, I still struggle with this. There's some challenges that I'm just going, I don't know how I'm like, sometimes it's ego. It's like, how dare you ask me this question? And sometimes it's just like not knowing and going, I don't know, I don't want to look like an idiot. So how am I going to manage this? Is there a clear way to raise concerns or name discomfort during and after the session that I'm facilitating? What kind of culture am I co-creating in this space? One that centers belonging, dignity, and accountability, or one that reaffirms some of the existing hierarchies? So, in terms of the tool, what I want to share with you is a thing that's kind of called the three conditions that shape the room, and recognizing what contributes to resistance or heightened emotional states, unease, barriers to learning or participating. So this is very much about being ready. Like a lot of the things that I'm going to share with you are going to make sense or be very familiar, but I always find that very useful to name them in terms of what might happen when you going into a space that you're going to facilitate or hold or organize. Okay. So one of the first things when people show up and there's a bit of, that resistance or things that might be going on is when there's a lack of clarity or readiness. When a group aren't clear or prepared or resourced for the work that you were planning to do. So the things to notice if people don't know why they are there. I know myself when I participate somewhere or I go somewhere, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I'm already a little resistant. I'm just like, oh, you're going to work hard to get me into your place, into your space, So that happens if any of you today work in more formal settings, or if your boss sends you a thing, you're going to this training. You're not even sure what this training is about. So this actually will contribute to you not being particularly ready and open for learning or participation. So when people don't know why they're there, when the issue is complex or not well understood, and I've noticed at the moment in the kind of current political climate around Europe and in the world, people get really defensive very quickly when you use big like words or terminology that they're just like, I don't know what you mean by that. What are we talking about? Or the issue is very complex and you try to oversimplify it and like completely take away all the nuances around it. When there's cultural or language dynamics that are unspoken, so the stuff that's actually beneath the surface, you're not too sure what's going on here. And if the group is tired, stressed, or depleted. So again, if you're organizing something with a group of young mothers or young carers, and you're like, oh, this is going to be great for them. And they're exhausted and they're coming into the space. They're like, why am I here? Like, what is it's, I have to do it because whatever told me I had to, but this is going to impact how they're going to show up in the space. So the things that we can do is clearly name the purpose, the process, and the expectations from the start. Be super clear. Use very simple language and check for understanding often. Acknowledge when things are complex or messy. You don't need to have all the answers. Make space for rest, breath, and breaks, and invite people to name what they need to feel more ready. So, what is it that you need to feel that you're ready to be in this space now? Another thing that we need to watch out for is the emotional landscape. So these are signs of unprocessed emotions, risk, or past harm that might show up in the group. So what we need to notice is that if the group has a painful history with the issue, so I don't know, you trying to organize something with tenants around housing, in an area that has been facing gentrification, for example. They've been consulted by local authorities, and their experience of being brought together is around consultations where their voice is going to mean nothing. So they have a painful history with this issue. So when you're kind of organizing a thing, you're like, oh, we're going to organize the tenants. But if their experience of being organized for meetings is to be betrayed, they're going to show up in a very, like, that's going to have an impact on how they're going to be in your space. If there's been silence or suppression around the issue before, so your organization suddenly is talking about intersectionality, talking about racial justice, and it's coming all from the right place, but you don't actually have a history of having done that. And then suddenly you're organizing meetings to talk about racial differences in our organization, to talk about, people are not going to trust that. They're going to be very suspicious of that. If the stakes feel high, so emotionally, politically, or personally, so if I have been hoping that I could attend something around, I don't know, Islamophobia, for example, and then I feel that this meeting or this training or this session could have a massive impact for my community. I'm going to come in and it's going to have I'm carrying a lot because I'm thinking I'm representing all of my community here. I'm coming into this space. The stakes are very high. Or if you think because of this space, you're going to get funding, for example, and you go like, if I mess this up, if I don't show up to all of the meetings that you organize or the sessions or the training, I might lose a benefit, like social welfare. I don't know how it is in Germany, but in Ireland, there are some benefits that will be connected to, you'll receive your payment if you go to all of these classes. So if I miss my classes, I'm going to lose my payment. So that is going to have a massive impact on how you participate as well. So what can we do? Gently name what might be in the room. There's history here. Offer grounding and safety before diving into hard conversations. Normalizing emotional responses. Use rituals, agreements, check-ins to create trust and give people ways to opt out, slow down, or process differently. And the last one is power and dynamics. So these are signs that visible or invisible dynamics are shaping how people are engaging. So what we notice is big power differences are present. So for example, hierarchies, your manager and you, people who fund you and other people like participants and staff, volunteers, paid people, all of these things. People resisting alternatives or staying fixed in one view. So we tried this before, it never worked. Like, why do you want to change these things? They worked really well. I know they're not now, but we don't need to change them. So you kind of have this resistance, which very often comes from fear. And because you haven't proved that they could trust you, so your alternatives, if my lived experience is that your alternatives cause more harm over and over again, I don't want your alternatives. And when there's hidden agendas or unspoken motives that shape the space. So, and hidden agendas don't necessarily are not like, dun, 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 I have a hidden agenda. Sometimes it's like, I am in some meetings, I definitely have a hidden agenda. I'll go in and go like, so this is a meeting about this, all these funders, and I'm here. My agenda is going to be trying to showcase an organization that I know of or so we have unspoken motives to be and participate in spaces, but this is going to shape it. And can contribute to kind of like being a bit suspicious or, figure out who is where, situating the facilitator, who's organizing this space. So what we can do is name power gently. So we're not all arriving from the same position, creating opportunities for different voices to speak early. Like on this one, actually, I have an example. So there is my experience is that when I am facilitating training for more of a formal organization, kind of an adult education or whatever, and that I know I'm going to have people from minorities, I always find that they actually feel they have to say or talk about their experiences of racism, for example, very early, because they feel they have to advocate for their community. And advocacy for the community takes over from learning, and it becomes their agenda, and it becomes something very important to them. So in recent years, what I've been doing is naming their experiences from the start and saying, we can't learn anything or do anything before naming what the experience of some communities is, without naming their community, but actually talking about different communities. And once they feel, okay, I don't have to represent my community because the facilitator has just named what I needed to name, I can now relax and think about the learning of the content, So that's kind of like, that's really important things. Use structures that distribute power. So you do your pair work, you do rounds, you do visuals. There's different tools as facilitators that we all have. Invite curiosity over certainty. So what might we not be seeing? It's the stuff I was telling you about, like the sharing instead of trying to convince as well is a really big one. It's like, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to share something, and you do whatever you need to do with what I'm sharing. And staying open and humble. Some dynamics will remain unspoken. That's the other thing as well, is like you're not the superhero who's going to change things. There's some stuff that's there. You come into community, there's stuff that's been going on there for a very long time. All you can do is actually pick up on the dynamics and try and figure out how your own agenda, your why of why you wanted to organize this to begin with, how you're going to get to that, taking into account there's some stuff that you will not change. Okay, quick check-in. How are we doing?
Yeah, good. Me? There has been another question in the chat.
Yeah.
One person writes that they didn't quite understand, how do you create this readiness to respond adequately on difference rather than prepare for many scenarios?
Okay, so it's, if you think about it, and also it is actually a question I am struggling with at the moment. I'm being challenged by that at the moment. So the idea of being prepared is you kind of go, and if this happens, and if this happens, and in case people show up and not show up. And so your energy, your mental energy goes into guessing. So you're guessing, you're assuming 100 different scenarios. The reality is that we'll never know until we're there. And the idea of being ready is to let go of trying to guess and go, okay, what do I need to be ready for whatever is going to show up? So whatever is going to show up at that moment, what are my tools that I need, so that I go, oh, okay, so I didn't think about this one, but I know what to do, So, and a lot of it is to do with that value and like anchoring yourself and reminding yourself of why you're doing what you're doing and going, okay, so this just happened. What do I need to remember here? I need to remember that I believe in justice or equality. I do believe that politics and society and oppression impacts people differently. So whatever is showing up is probably a symptom of something, So the readiness is your analysis tools, your clarity tools, all the things that you need to figure out what's going on in front of you when it shows up, instead of actually having a scenario for each. So I'll do this if this happens, and I'll say this if this person says this. I'll tell them blah 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 blah. It's like what you do after something happens. You're like, and I would have said this, and I would have said that, and I would have, and you never know that you would have said that, because at that moment you froze, or at that moment because that's what you needed to do to stay safe or to keep other people safe. Does that answer question?
It does. It made it very clear.
Great, brilliant.
The person. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's your turn. We're gonna have like 10 minutes in smaller groups for you to discuss that. So you to remember it's being with the world, being with myself, being with the other. And so if we use the three ways of being to critically think of your learning and thinking spaces, what would come up? So are you working within formal education, non-formal education, civil society, kind of like with NGOs, with youth and community services, grassroots or support groups? To help you, and I'm not going to go through the details, but just to give you a sense of how this works is it's actually like I'm trying to think, will I wrap up with that? No, actually, like if you have a conversation about whatever is the context in which you might be organizing events or delivering training or content, if you kind of think of those three ways, what comes up in terms of power in particular? I'd love for you to think about power in particular, and what it means in the spaces that you're trying to organize. Does that make sense? Is that kind of clear-ish? It's for you to give the practice a go and see if it makes sense or helps you think about your learning space in a different way.
I think I would need a repetition of that, please.
Okay. I actually, you know what? While I was saying it, I knew it. I was like, that's not even clear to you. What are you asking people to do? So if you think of the practice of, trying to think of those three dimensions at the same time, so context, what's going on for myself and how I am with others. If you think of that in the learning space or the spaces that can be learning or thinking or whatever spaces that you organize or you facilitate or you curate, how would that impact your oh my God, I'm making this even worse, Judith. I'm sorry. I was supposed to clarify this, but so basically the question is, do you think it would be useful or helpful to use this way of thinking about the space that you facilitate? Is that better? Thank you. You're being so kind. You're like, no, it made no sense, but I'm just going to say yes because this woman is not, it's not going to get better. You're right. It is not going to get better. So if in small groups, just think about if this practice could be helpful in the way you engage or you think about the spaces you facilitate. Here we go. Welcome back, everybody. I know it probably feels very short, and I'm like we're very conscious of the time as well. So I'd be very curious. I'd invite people to maybe share in the chat whatever might have come up for them. But also, I'm very curious about the different spaces that you guys might be organizing or facilitating or curating. So are you more in like grassroots spaces, support groups, formal, non-formal education, NGOs, just to get a little bit of a sense of the kind of spaces that you find yourself either organizing or facilitating would be really cool. Just because I kind of feel I've been talking at a group of people and like talking all about like how to make this work when I actually didn't get a chance to really know who's in the room. So that would be really lovely. And if you can share some of what came up in your conversations, that would be really cool as well. Okay, I'm gonna bring all of this into like wrapping it up. And one of the things that I think might be very useful is to think about what do I need to think about before I organize anything? What happens during and what happens after. And I use the three ways of being, which I'm still not, doesn't sound great, does it? Like really, please save me by coming up with a really cool name for it. So if you think of before, so the idea is prepare with intention. So in terms of your context, what is the political and social context in which I am facilitating this space? Is access inclusion designed in, or will I have to make sure they are? Who holds the power to make it happen and possible? When you go into the self, why am I doing this? What values or beliefs are guiding my decisions here? Am I aware of my own assumptions or limitations? And in terms of others, who is this for? And have those most impacted shaped the process? Whose voices are centered in the planning? So that's all in your before. During, hold with awareness. So in context, is the space set up to welcome the differences in people's lived experience? Are concerns connected to the outside able to surface and be met with care? So by that, I mean, if the things that are like impacting people from outside, how are they going to show up in my space, and how am I going to be able to manage it? The self, am I staying grounded and self-aware as I facilitate or participate? How am I responding when challenges arise? And for the others, is participation equitable, meaningful, and safe for everyone involved? And are people feeling seen, heard, and valued in real time? On this, just maybe put a little caveat around safe. I believe we overuse the word safe space. For me, a safe space can only be safe if it's exclusionary. Yes, you heard me well. You need to exclude people for other people to feel safe in very specific places. So when we're talking about learning or thinking spaces, I would talk about a safe learning space. What you need to make a place safe for learning is very different from making a place safe for a person. I don't know what safety means for every single one of you. I don't know what might trigger you, so I cannot assure you safety when I don't have all of that information. But what I can make is a place that is safe to learn, or a place that is safe to participate, or a place that is safe to think. And these are very different in terms of what is needed for these to happen. And finally, in your after, following through with integrity. So what patterns, insights, or tensions emerged as symptoms of the wider and broader context while you were facilitating? What will I carry forward into future practice? For the self, what have I learned about myself and my facilitation? How have I responded to feedback? And for others, whose needs were met and whose weren't? Have I made space for honest reflection and repair if needed? So I wanted to kind of name the artists. Like, I probably saw a lot of the artwork in my slides. They're from 3 beautiful illustrators and artists that I would really recommend to get your prints from, calendars from, all that stuff. It's Danielle Boudou-Fortuné, Sakina Said, and Oli Costello. And I would really recommend their art because it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful.